Hey everyone, and welcome back. We're ready for another deep dive, and today we are tackling 21 lessons for the 21st century.
By Yuval Noah Harari.
Yeah. Have you had a chance to read it yet?
I have.
It's a really dense book,
It is.
and it covers so much,
Yeah,
but it's so relevant for like what we're going through right now.
absolutely.
You know?
Like, just everything feels like it's changing so fast.
Right. And every day it's like, what?
What?
There's like some new headline that completely throws you for a loop.
Absolutely. And that's what I think is so great about this book, is it kind of helps you, like, take a step back and make sense of some of this stuff.
Yeah, and maybe even find some hope along the way, because it can feel pretty bleak out there.
It can.
So one of the things I thought was so interesting was just how he connects all these different things that you wouldn't think are connected.
Yeah.
Like he's talking about technology and politics and religion and war and like the meaning of life all in one book.
And they all weave together in this really interesting way.
They do.
And it's like almost every chapter is like mind-blowing on its own.
Yeah, for sure.
But then, like you said, when you step back and you see how it all fits together, it's really fascinating.
Okay, so should we just jump right in?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so like right out of the gate, he talks about this crisis of liberalism
Yeah.
and how liberalism is like facing this crisis unlike any it's faced before.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, well, what does that even mean?
Right.
What is he talking about?
Well, I think one of the things he's getting at is this idea that liberalism was kind of built for a different world.
Okay.
A world that was much slower moving, a world of steam engines, not a world of artificial intelligence and bioengineering.
So it's like our operating system needs an upgrade.
That's a great way to put it.
But like politically, it's just not equipped to deal with the problems that we're facing in the 21st century.
And that's why I think he calls it a crisis, because it's not just that things are changing. It's that the systems we have in place to deal with change are not really equipped for the kind of change that we're seeing now.
It feels so different than like any other time in history.
It does.
Like the pace of change is just so rapid and so dramatic.
Yeah, and I think he really highlights how technology is one of the driving forces behind this.
Yeah.
You know, in the past, you had these big changes like the Industrial Revolution, but even then it took decades for those changes to really play out.
Yeah.
And now you have things like artificial intelligence and biotechnology that are developing so quickly
Right.
that it's hard for our institutions, our governments, our social norms to keep up.
Totally. And it creates this like disconnect almost
Yeah.
between like the systems that we have and like the reality of what's happening.
Exactly.
And I think that's where a lot of this anxiety and frustration is coming from.
I think so too.
Like people feel like they're being left behind.
Yeah, and they're not sure what the future holds.
Right.
They feel like the old ways of doing things
Don't work anymore.
don't work anymore.
Okay, so we've got this crisis of liberalism, and then he really dives into technology.
Yeah.
There's like a whole other can of worms.
It is.
But one of the points that really like blew my mind
Yeah.
was how he talks about AI being able to outperform humans, even in jobs that require intuition,
Right.
like driving or lending money.
Yeah, like things that you think require like a human touch or a human understanding.
Right. Like, how is that even possible?
Yeah, it seems counterintuitive, right?
Yeah.
Because we think of AI as being very logical and data-driven,
Right.
but not necessarily intuitive.
Right.
But the key is that AI is actually very good at pattern recognition.
Oh, okay.
And in a way, human intuition is also a form of pattern recognition.
So, like, we are drawing on our past experiences.
Exactly.
And we're seeing patterns and making decisions based on that.
Right. And AI is doing the same thing, but on a much larger scale.
Oh.
It's able to analyze massive amounts of data and identify patterns that we might miss.
Wow. So it's like taking that human intuition and like amplifying it to a whole other level.
Right. Exactly. And that's why it can outperform humans, even in these areas that we think require like a gut feeling or a sense of judgment.
Okay. That is super fascinating and also a little bit creepy,
It is.
right? Like if AI can make better decisions than us about like jobs and relationships and maybe even like ethical dilemmas,
Yeah. Where does that leave us?
what does that mean for our free will?
That's one of the big questions that Harari raises in the book.
And it's like one of those things that kind of keeps me up at night.
Oh,
Like it's both exciting and terrifying at the same time.
yeah. And he really doesn't shy away from the implications of this.
No.
He really digs into this idea that free will might be an illusion,
Okay.
that it might just be a biochemical process that AI could potentially decode.
Okay, so that is a very unsettling thought.
It is.
But like, let's just sit with that for a minute.
Okay.
Like imagine a world where an algorithm tells you who to marry or what career to pursue.
Yeah, or what to eat for breakfast.
Right. Or like what to wear.
Like all these decisions that we think of as being personal and based on our preferences
Yeah.
could potentially be outsourced to algorithms.
Okay, so would you trust it? Would you resist?
That's a big question.
That is a big question. And
Yeah.
I think that's what makes this book so thought-provoking.
It is.
It's like he's not giving us answers,
No.
but he's raising all these really important questions that we need to be thinking about.
And I think that's what makes it so relevant for the 21st century.
Totally. And like, just when you think you're spiraling into an existential crisis,
He throws us a curveball.
yes,
Wow.
he throws us a curveball. He's like, don't forget about human stupidity.
Right, because that's a factor too.
Yeah. And he's like, we should never underestimate the power of human stupidity, especially when it comes to conflict.
Right.
So like all this technology and all this advancement.
It doesn't necessarily make us smarter.
Right.
It doesn't necessarily make us more rational.
In fact, it might even make us more prone to making stupid decisions because we have all this power at our fingertips, but we don't always know how to use it wisely.
And he uses this example of kamikaze pilots in World War II
Oh, yeah.
who were sacrificing themselves for a cause that was already lost.
Right.
And it's like a really stark example of how ideology and what he calls stupidity can lead to irrational and devastating actions.
Totally. And it makes you think like even in the 21st century, with all our technology and all our progress, we're still capable of making really stupid decisions.
Absolutely.
That could have catastrophic consequences.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point to keep in mind
It is.
as we think about the future and all the challenges that we face.
So we've got this crisis of liberalism. We've got technology advancing at an unprecedented rate. We've got human stupidity, still a major factor.
Yeah.
And then he dives into this whole question of meaning.
Right.
Like, what is the meaning of life? Why are we here?
Yeah.
What's it all about?
The big questions.
The big questions. And honestly, I think that was like the heart of the book for me.
I agree.
It was the part that really resonated.
It's really where he gets philosophical.
He does.
And he kind of examines all these different narratives that humans have created throughout history to try to make sense of the world.
Right, like religion, nationalism, romantic love.
Exactly.
Like all these big stories that we tell ourselves.
And he kind of dissects them and suggests that ultimately they might be illusions.
Okay, so that sounds kind of depressing.
It can be.
Like if all these stories that we've relied on for centuries are just illusions, then what are we left with?
Right. And he doesn't sugarcoat it.
No,
He's very honest about the fact that this can be a bleak realization.
but potentially liberating too.
Yeah, because if we can let go of these old stories,
Right.
then we can start to create new ones.
New stories that are more relevant to the 21st century.
And new stories that maybe are more authentic to who we are.
So it's not about finding meaning out there.
Right.
It's about creating meaning from within.
Exactly.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
And this is where he brings in this whole idea of meditation.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, he talks about meditation as a tool for seeing reality more clearly, for understanding our own minds, for breaking free from these illusions that cause us suffering.
And he even shares his own experience with Vipassana meditation,
He does.
which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, it's kind of personalizes it.
It does.
And it makes it feel more accessible.
Totally.
Yeah.
Because like when you think of meditation, you might think of like monks on a mountaintop or something.
Right.
But he's saying like, no, this is something that anyone can do. And it's not just about like relaxation.
Right.
It's about like a deeper understanding of yourself and the world around you.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about liberalism, technology, free will, the meaning of life, meditation.
That's a lot.
It is a lot, and we are just getting started.
Scratching the surface.
Yeah, but I'm already seeing these connections between all these different lessons.
Yeah.
Like, it's all starting to make sense.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that's so brilliant about this book is how he weaves all these different ideas together.
It's like a tapestry of the 21st century.
It is, and it really forces you to question not just what you know,
Right.
but how you know it.
Okay, I am excited to keep going.
Me too.
This deep dive has barely begun, and I can already tell it's going to be a wild ride.
It is. Buckle up.
Yeah, buckle up.
We're just getting started. It's going to be a wild ride for sure. And, you know, speaking of information overload, that's one of the biggest things he talks about in the book.
Dude.
Just the sheer volume of information that we're bombarded with every day.
It is. It's crazy.
It's not just that there's a lot of it, though.
Right.
It's that it's hard to know what to trust.
Yeah, what's real, what's fake, what's biased.
Exactly.
It's like you were saying before, drinking from a fire hose.
It is, and Harari argues that this isn't just annoying or overwhelming.
Right.
He says it's actually undermining our ability to think critically.
Oh, wow.
and make informed decisions.
So it's not just like a personal problem.
Oh, yeah.
It's like a societal problem.
It affecting our politics, our economy, our relationships.
It's like everything.
Everything.
Okay, so then what do we do about it?
Well, he talks about this idea of the post-truth era,
Yeah?
where facts and truth don't seem to matter as much anymore.
It's crazy, right?
It is, and it's really scary.
Yeah, like how do we even know what to believe anymore?
Right.
Like everything is up for debate.
Hmm.
Everything is contested.
And everyone has their own version of the truth.
So what does he suggest? Like how do we navigate this?
Well, he doesn't give us like a step-by-step guide,
Okay.
but he emphasizes the importance of developing a healthy skepticism
Okay.
towards all information.
Even stuff that we agree with.
Yes, even stuff that aligns with our existing beliefs.
Okay, that's hard.
It is.
Because it's so easy to just like accept things that confirm what we already think.
It is.
But he's saying like, no, we need to be more critical.
We need to question everything.
Even our own beliefs.
Exactly.
Okay, that's a challenge.
It is, but I think it's an important one.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so we need to be more skeptical,
Right.
but then how do we actually figure out what's true?
Well, this is where he talks about the power of stories.
Okay.
He says that humans are storytelling creatures.
We are.
We've always used stories to make sense of the world.
To explain things to each other, to pass on knowledge.
Exactly. But in this age of information overload,
Yep.
the lines between fact and fiction can get really blurry.
Right. It's like with social media and the internet,
Mm-hmm.
it's so easy to spread misinformation.
It is.
And propaganda.
And it can spread like wildfire.
It's crazy how quickly something can go viral.
And once it's out there, it's really hard to contain.
Right. Even if it's been debunked,
Exactly.
people still believe it.
So Harari argues that we need to be aware of how these stories, even false ones, can manipulate our emotions and beliefs.
Okay, so it's not just about fact-checking.
No.
It's about understanding how narratives work and how they tap into our fears and desires.
Yeah, like why are we drawn to certain stories? What makes them so compelling, even if they're not true?
That's a good question.
And I think it's something that we need to be more aware of.
Yeah, because it's so easy to just get swept up in a good story.
It is, especially if it confirms our existing biases.
Okay, so we need to be careful about the stories we consume
Yes.
and the stories we tell ourselves.
Exactly.
Okay?
Yeah.
I'm with you. And, you know, speaking of stories, I was curious about what he had to say about science fiction.
Oh, yeah, that's an interesting one.
Because, you know, we often look to science fiction to imagine the future.
Right.
Like, what's it going to be like?
What are the possibilities?
But Harari actually challenges that.
He does.
He says that science fiction often gets the future wrong.
And I was like, what?
Yeah, me too. But then he explains that it's because our visions of the future are shaped by present-day anxieties.
Right.
So, like, we're not really imagining the future.
Right.
We're just projecting our current fears and desires onto it.
And he gives this example of all those old movies that predicted flying cars by the year 2000. And it's like we were so obsessed with this idea of personal transportation that we couldn't really imagine other possibilities.
Like, maybe we don't need flying cars.
Maybe there are other solutions.
Maybe we need to rethink transportation altogether.
Exactly.
Okay, so are you saying science fiction is useless?
No,
That's
not at
fine.
all.
Right.
I think he's saying that we need to be more critical of it.
Oh,
We need to use it as a tool for exploration,
right.
for raising questions, for challenging our assumptions.
Not for predicting the future.
Right, because the future is always going to be more complex and more unpredictable than we can imagine.
Okay, I like that. So we need to be more critical of science fiction, but we can still enjoy it.
Absolutely.
We can still find inspiration in it.
We can still use it to spark our imagination.
And to think about the future in new and different ways.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about information overload, the power of story science fiction.
Mm-hmm.
And all of this kind of ties into this bigger question of how we prepare for a future that we can't fully predict. And that brings us to education.
Yes.
Because our current system feels so outdated.
It does.
Like it's preparing students for a world that no longer exists.
Yeah, we're still teaching kids how to memorize facts and figures.
Right.
When in reality, those things are readily available at our fingertips.
Yeah, you can just Google it.
Exactly. So what's the point?
Right? Like, what do we need to be teaching kids in the 21st century?
Well, Harari argues that we need to move away from rote memorization and standardized tests.
Okay.
It's not about cramming information.
Right.
It's about fostering those essential 21st century skills.
Like what kind of skills?
Critical thinking, problem-solving, adaptability.
Okay, so it's not about what you know.
Right.
It's about how you learn.
Exactly. Because in a world of constant change, the ability to adapt and pick up new skills is going to be crucial.
Yeah, it's like learning how to learn.
Exactly.
Because the things you learn today might be obsolete tomorrow.
So you need to be able to constantly update your knowledge and skills.
And be comfortable with uncertainty.
Yeah.
Because the future is gonna be full of it.
And he even suggests that schools should be more like labs or studios where students can experiment, explore their passions, and develop their creative potential.
So it's not just about like preparing for a job.
No?
It's about like becoming a well-rounded human being.
Exactly. It's about fostering a lifelong love of learning.
That's beautiful.
It is, and I think it's something that's really missing from our current system.
Yeah, we're so focused on like getting good grades and getting into a good college
Right.
that we forget about the joy of learning.
And the importance of developing those skills that are going to serve us well throughout our lives.
Totally. Okay, so we need to rethink education.
Yes.
But then there's this bigger question of meaning and purpose.
Right.
Like we've talked about all these challenges, but what's it all for?
Yeah, like why does any of this matter?
And it feels like all the old narratives are crumbling.
They are.
Like religion, nationalism.
Capitalism even.
Right, like all these big stories that have given people a sense of meaning and purpose.
They're not working as well as they used to.
Right, and it's leaving a lot of people feeling lost.
It is.
So what does Harari have to say about that?
Well, he gets really philosophical here.
Okay.
He explores how humans have sought meaning throughout history, through all these different narratives that we've talked about.
Right.
But he suggests that ultimately they might all be illusions.
Okay, so are you saying life is meaningless?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
He argues that the universe itself might not have inherent meaning,
Okay.
but that's where our freedom comes in.
Okay, I'm listening.
We have the power to create our own meaning.
To define our own purpose.
Exactly.
So it's not about finding meaning out there.
Right.
It's about creating it from within.
Exactly.
I like that.
Yeah, it's empowering.
It is?
Because it means that we're not just passive recipients of meaning.
Right.
We have agency.
We can choose what matters to us.
Exactly. And he suggests that by understanding ourselves better, we can begin to craft a sense of meaning and purpose.
That's authentic to who we are.
Exactly.
And that's where meditation comes in again,
That's
right?
right.
Because it's not just about relaxation.
No.
It's about understanding your own mind.
Right.
Seeing through those illusions that cause suffering.
And connecting with something deeper.
Something more meaningful.
Yeah, and he talks about meditation as a secular practice.
Okay.
Accessible to anyone regardless of their religious beliefs.
So it's not about like becoming a Buddhist or anything.
No.
It's just about training your mind.
To be more aware.
More present.
More compassionate.
Okay, I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together.
Me too.
It's like he's giving us this toolkit
Yeah.
for navigating the 21st century.
And it's not just about like surviving. It's about thriving.
About living a meaningful and fulfilling life.
Exactly.
In a world that's constantly changing.
And full of challenges.
Okay, so we've talked about liberalism, technology, meaning education. But what about the real world problems?
Yeah.
Like terrorism, climate change, inequality.
He dives into those too.
He does.
Yeah. And again, it's about challenging our assumptions and thinking differently.
Okay.
Like with terrorism, for example, he argues that we need to avoid overreacting.
Okay.
To not let fear dictate our actions in ways that benefit the terrorists.
So it's about being strategic.
Yes.
Focusing on the root causes.
Right.
Not just the sinker. And that's hard because when there's a terrorist attack, it's natural to want to strike back.
It is.
To want to do something to feel safe.
But he's saying that we need to be more thoughtful.
More deliberate.
More long-term in our thinking.
Okay, so what does that look like in practice?
Well, he emphasizes international cooperation.
Okay.
Intelligence sharing. Addressing issues like poverty and political oppression.
So it's not just about like military action. It's about like a more holistic approach.
Yes.
That addresses the underlying conditions that lead to terrorism.
Right, and that takes time and patience and a willingness to work together.
Okay. And what about climate change?
Well, he stresses that climate change is a global problem.
Obviously.
That requires global cooperation.
Right. No single nation can solve it alone.
Exactly. So he's calling for international agreements, technological innovation, a shift in our consumption patterns.
So it's about like a systemic change?
It is. It's about changing our relationship with the planet.
And with each other.
Right.
Because ultimately climate change is going to affect everyone.
whether we like it or not.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's a massive undertaking.
It is.
But he's saying it's not too late to act.
Right. It's about moving away from short-term thinking,
Okay.
prioritizing sustainability,
Mm-hmm.
and recognizing that it's a moral issue,
Right.
a question of justice for future generations.
Okay, I'm with you. And then there's inequality.
Yeah, he doesn't shy away from that either.
He points out the staggering gap between the rich and the poor.
Yes, and how it's just getting wider.
And he argues that it's not just morally unjust,
Right.
but also a threat to social cohesion and global stability.
So it's not just like a bleeding heart issue.
No.
It's like a practical issue.
It is, he's saying that if we don't address inequality,
Yeah.
it's going to come back to bite us all.
Okay, so then what do we do about it?
Well, he suggests investing in education,
Yeah.
healthcare,
Mm.
social safety nets,
Okay.
promoting fair labor practices,
Right.
and ensuring everyone has a chance to succeed.
So it's about creating a more just and equitable system,
Exactly.
not just redistributing wealth.
Right. It's about giving everyone the opportunity to thrive.
Okay, and all of this ties back into technology, right?
It does.
Because technology is both a potential solution
Mm-hmm.
and a potential amplifier of these problems.
Exactly.
So it's not like technology is inherently good or bad.
No.
It's how we use it.
Right. And he delves into AI and biotechnology, emphasizing the need for critical thinking and ethical awareness.
It's about ensuring that technology serves human well-being,
Yes.
not the other way around.
And that we're not just passive victims of technology.
Right.
We have the power to shape its development and use.
We can choose how we want to integrate it into our lives.
Exactly. And we need to think critically about the values that are embedded in these technologies
Okay.
and make sure they align with our own.
Okay, so we've talked about liberalism technology, meaning education, terrorism, climate change, inequality.
It's a lot.
It is a lot.
Yeah.
What's the common thread?
Yeah. What ties it all together?
What's the big takeaway from all this?
Well, I think his final lesson sums it up perfectly.
Okay.
He encourages us to cultivate humility.
Humility.
Yeah. Humility.
Okay. I wouldn't have guessed that.
I know it seems counterintuitive.
It does. Why humility?
Because he sees it as the antidote to arrogance and certainty.
Okay.
Those things that often lead to conflict and stagnation.
So it's not about being meek or submissive.
Mm.
It's about having an open mind,
Yes.
a willingness to learn and grow,
Exactly.
to admit that we don't know everything.
Right, and to be open to the possibility that we might be wrong.
Okay. I can see how that's important.
Yeah, because if we're not humble,
Mm-hmm.
we're not going to be able to learn and adapt.
Right. We're going to be stuck in our own ways.
And we're going to miss out on all the possibilities that the future holds.
So humility is like the foundation for everything else.
It is. It's the foundation for critical thinking,
Mm-hmm.
compassion.
And ultimately creating a better future.
Exactly.
Okay. I'm starting to see how it all connects.
Me too.
But this is a lot to process.
It is.
It's kind of overwhelming.
And that's where his emphasis on meditation comes in again.
Okay.
He encourages us to simply observe,
Okay.
to pay attention to the world around us, to
Yeah.
question our assumptions,
Mm-hmm.
and to be open to new ideas.
So it's about cultivating a mindful and discerning mind
Yes.
to not just react,
Right.
but to truly see and understand. Okay, I like that.
Yeah, and ultimately, I think that's what 21 Lessons for the 21st Century is all about.
Okay.
It's not a set of answers,
Mm-hmm.
but a call to action,
To do what?
to engage with the world
Mhm.
in a more thoughtful, compassionate, and humble way.
Okay. I can get behind that.
So we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive
We have.
and touched on some pretty huge ideas.
Yeah, my brain is like full.
I know, right? Like, where do we even go from here?
Right. Exactly. Like, okay, we get it. The world is changing.
Yeah,
Technology is crazy. Liberalism is having a crisis. We need to meditate more.
right.
But like, how do we actually put all this into practice?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is. Like, I'm walking away with all this new knowledge,
Yeah.
but I also feel kind of overwhelmed.
And that's something Harari addresses, too.
He does.
Yeah, he doesn't just leave us hanging with these big ideas.
Okay.
He actually offers some practical advice for, like, how to actually live in the 21st century.
Okay, I'm all ears.
Well, one of the things he keeps coming back to is this idea of understanding our own minds.
Okay.
He argues that, like, in this world of information overload and constant change, our thoughts and emotions can really lead us astray.
That makes sense.
You know, we've talked about how powerful stories can be
Right.
and how easy it is to get swept up in emotional reaction.
Oh, it's like all the time on social media.
Exactly. And that's why Harari believes that meditation is so crucial.
Okay.
He sees it as a way to like train your mind to be more aware, more discerning, more resilient.
It's like a mental workout.
Yeah, exactly. Like building those mental muscles
Okay.
so you can navigate all the chaos and noise out there.
So it's not just about like relaxation or stress relief.
No, it's deeper than that.
It's like a fundamental skill for the 21st century.
I think so. And he argues that by practicing mindfulness,
Okay.
we can develop a greater sense of self-awareness,
Okay.
which allows us to make more conscious choices rather than just reacting impulsively.
Oh, I like that.
Oh.
Yeah, it's like instead of just being reactive,
Yeah,
you're being proactive.
exactly. You're taking control of your own mind and your own actions.
Okay, I can see how that would be helpful in like all areas of life.
It is, and he says this ability to observe and choose is essential not just for our personal well-being,
Yeah.
but also for making sound decisions about the big challenges we face as a society.
Okay, so like climate change, inequality, all that stuff.
Exactly, because those issues can feel so overwhelming.
They do.
It's easy to just like shut down or get swept up in fear and anger.
Totally. I feel that way all the time.
And that's what Harari warns against.
Okay.
He argues that we need to approach these challenges with a clear and calm mind,
Okay.
with a willingness to listen to different perspectives,
Okay.
and a commitment to finding solutions that work for everyone.
Like being the eye of the storm.
Yes, exactly, like staying grounded in the midst of all the chaos.
Okay. I like that analogy.
And this brings us back to humility.
Humility. Again.
I know, right? It's a recurring theme. But he argues that a humble approach is like essential for navigating the complexities of the 21st century.
Okay. I'm listening.
It's about recognizing that we don't have all the answers that we need to be open to learning from others and that we're all in this together.
So like the opposite of that, like I know everything attitude.
Exactly. It's about letting go of the ego, the arrogance, the certainty,
Okay.
and approaching these challenges with a sense of shared humanity.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, it's about collaboration and cooperation, not competition and division.
Okay. So humility, mindfulness, understanding our own minds.
Yeah.
Those are like the key takeaways here.
I think so. And ultimately, I think that's what makes Harari's message so powerful.
Okay.
It's not about doom and gloom
Yeah.
or giving up in the face of these challenges.
Right.
It's about empowering us to take action,
Yeah.
to make conscious choices.
To shape a better future.
Exactly. And I think that's a message we can all get behind.
This has been such an incredible deep dive.
It has.
I feel like we've learned so much.
Me too.
And I'm definitely walking away with a lot to think about.
And hopefully some practical tools to apply to your own life.
Yeah, for sure. So to everyone listening out there,
Yeah.
if you haven't read 21 Lessons for the 21st Century yet, I highly recommend it.
It's definitely worth the read.
It is. It's a dense read, but it's so worth it.
It's full of thought-provoking ideas.
And it really makes you think about the world in a new way.
So pick up the book, dive into these ideas, and let's keep the conversation going.
Yes. What are your takeaways? What resonated with
What are
you?
you still grappling with?
Share your thoughts with us online or leave a comment below.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you.
Because in a world that's constantly changing, the journey of learning and discovery never ends.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.